You're listening to the All Night Society, an actual play podcast brought to you by Queen's Court Games. Now, no prince, especially not this prince, given the balance of power between the Primogen Council and Prince Kevin Jackson, could order his council to show up immediately after sunset. They have their own things to take care of. Maybe they want to eat ahead of time. There are a million reasons why this thing can't start immediately after the sun goes down. You all know this. You don't have time for too many plans in advance of your meeting. This is absolutely the wrong time to be late, right? So given that hour and a half window between rising from the day sleep on your own and showing up at the predetermined meeting location, what are you getting into? How do you steel yourself for what's about to come?
I want to say it's more for Zion than it is for me in this case. I'm bringing him in front of one of possibly the worst people in his life. Destroyed him. But I know myself too well that I'm going to have to steel myself against the anger that's inevitably going to bubble up when I see Newberry. It's a mixture of what I had to do and what he's been continuing to do to the Kindred of Chicago, and they've been ignoring it. The entire system, but I can't see that there, so I need to pull myself together. The morning is going to be spent on letting Zion know what's going to come up. Not in exact terms, that just we're going to talk to some people. I need you to be on your best behavior, and don't worry, I'm going to be there right next to you the entire time.
For my part, I'm kind of nervously twiddling my thumbs, making sure I have everything in order. Probably got one of my homemade, blood smoothies in my hand, but there's not enough in it to really slake the hunger. I haven't had time to replenish my supplies in quite some time, so it's just kind of it doesn't quench the hunger, it just reminds me that it's there. But if we manage to live through this, I am looking forward to a little R&R time to get things back in order. Part of me kind of regrets that I'm going to go to this meeting looking so beat up as I am, but it's just not enough time to deal with that.
Well, currently my library is a mess, an organized mess. There are piles of information everywhere, and I've been printing out photos and just gathering everything that we need and compiling everything into a nice, neat little binder. It's something that will inevitably have to be destroyed after the fact because, there's a lot in there. But I want to be absolutely certain that we are coming with all of the information that we have at our disposal. The last thing that we want is Newberry to get away with this. So if a binder I must have, then so be it.
I'm surprised that Ivy's the kind of person who waits until the day of to do that kind of thing. I figured there would have been color-coded tabs.
I mean, yeah, that's why everything is organized into neat little piles. The problem is I needed to order a new binder because all the ones that I had were very, very small, and I'd rather come with one large binder than 3 little ones, right? And then I realized that it might be better to have multiple copies, so I had to weigh all the options. So this is just the final making sure everything is organized check.
Well, you've given comfort to your thralls. You've nursed the tail end of a smoothie. You've triple-checked your folders. Everything is as in order as it's going to be. At this point, you have only the evidence you've collected the preparations you've made, and faith in yourself to see the job done. One way or another, each of you makes it to the prince's home. The meeting will be a quiet, private affair. The Primogen likely meeting ahead of you by 10 or 15 minutes. As the prince is not yet ready, he's asked you to wait in one of the parlors just off the entrance to his home. And it is at this point you notice something is missing. Does anyone want to venture a guess?
I assume the prince gave us chairs, right?
There are chairs, yes. They're nice. Nice chairs. No beanbags here.
God.
Thank God. We'd never get Rebecca inside the room.
Hey, I know how to sit in those now.
Trial and error has occurred.
They grow up so fast.
Wait. There's only the three of us, isn't there?
Yeah, by my count, there's one Ivy, one Schmendrick, one Rebecca, one Zion. That's 4.
Where's Maya? She's not the type to be late. She's punctual.
If I were to guess, she probably has stuff to do with Sierra. Though it does seem like she would want to be here for this.
Why wouldn't she have told us if she wasn't going to be here?
Just more shadowy clan shit's my guess.
I kind of chalk it up to something outside of her circumstances. Like, she could not be here because of something else. I'm not terribly worried about it, but that's just because I'm trying to keep my mind focused on the trial, quote unquote.
Something getting between her and her just dues is just strange. She'd want to see Newberry get crushed, or at least have a part in it.
Unless this was her plan all along. You guys really give her an awful lot of credit for no reason. You realize that, right?
I mean, we're friends with you, and she does have a vested interest in it.
I kind of balk at Rebecca. Well, that's a thing.
Yeah, you're friends with me. She's a Lasombra that was sent here to watch over us and make sure that we were doing our jobs right. And you seriously think that we are anything alike?
Oh, wait on. Perhaps it's less that she doesn't want to be here and more like she's done her job already. If she's reported to Sierra, there's probably no point. Who knows?
Probably the case, higher ups and whatnot. Always a bigger fish.
I don't think any of this is correct. Maya is somebody who was literally put here to make sure that this was done correctly. Now, the moment has arrived where our investigation is over and we are to present everything that we've found. And she's not here?
Do you think this may be foul play?
Either it's foul play, I suppose that's possible, but more likely, I wonder if she maybe doesn't feel like we have everything that we need to convict him. Because if we don't and it goes south, she probably doesn't want her name tied to it.
Right. Or she doesn't believe in the system behind it. I mean, it is just a popularity contest, right? It's not like she's winning anything with them.
Yeah, she could be throwing us under the bus, but I hope that's not the case, especially everything we've been through. But I've seen Kindred do worse, so...
It only counts as being thrown under the bus if you lose, right?
That's true.
Well, all of this conjecture, no matter what it does for your confidence in the moment, will have to be set aside as one of the prince's ghouls approaches. He nods respectfully and lets you know the prince is ready. He gestures across himself, and once it's clear that you're all following along, he'll lead you to the room where everything's about to happen.
There's no going back. Before I get up and follow this gentleman into the room, I give Zion a look. Hey, buddy, just wait here. He's gonna come get you when we need you, okay? Remember what we talked about? That gentleman there is gonna be needed later. Would you mind fetching him when we require his presence? His name is Zion.
Is it acceptable that he remains in the parlor until this time?
Yes, that would be just fine. He knows to behave himself. And hey, Zion, we're gonna go talk to those people like we talked about this evening. I'm gonna be right there with you, just sitting here and wait. This nice gentleman's gonna come and get you when we're ready, okay?
Yeah, I guess that sounds okay. Are you gonna be gone long? 'Cause last time you said you'd be right back, but then it was actually a very long time before you came back, and I don't want to do that again.
Oh my god, I feel so guilty. Kind of bite back the twinge of guilt that immediately hits the back of my mind and say, don't worry, I'm gonna be right across the hallway. And it's not gonna be too long, I promise. Do you trust me?
Okay, well, if you promise.
Good. I'll go sit down for a bit, have some fun. We'll be right back. And I'll walk out of the room.
As we get right out of earshot, I lean into Rebecca and say, you know what he's going to walk into, right? It's kind of harsh of you to lie to him like that and tell him everything's going to be okay.
Ivy, I'm not letting Newberry lay a fucking finger on him. Even if this goes sideways, it's going to be okay because I'm going to be there, and you're going to be there, and Schmendrick's going to be there. He's not getting hurt no matter what the outcome of this case is.
For your sake, I hope, for our sake, I hope you're right. Maya certainly doesn't believe in us like that.
It is. I'm bringing him against the person who ruined his life. But I'm going to be there, right? It's got to be better for him in that way, and it's better than just sitting and waiting for me to come back home after another night like this. I'm giving him a piece of himself back. He's going to be able to speak for himself.
Well, ladies, as dour as the situation is, I think we got this. I believe in us, if that counts for anything at all.
Well, on all your previous visits to this particular building, you've been led upstairs to the second floor where the prince's office waits. That is not the case on this particular visit. Rather than ascend the grand stairway ahead of you, you are instead led to the left. He leads you halfway down a hallway, just as well appointed as all the others you've experienced here, stopping in front of twinned mahogany doors. He knocks only once. A voice you recognize as belonging to Prince Kevin Jackson merely says, "We're ready." The ghoul opens the door. Introducing Ivy LaRue of Clan Tremere, Rebecca Mitchell of Clan Gangrel, and Schmendrick of Clan Nosferatu. There are 13 kindred in this room right now, most of them seated around a large oval-shaped dining table. It's bare of any of the decor you'd expect. No plates, no napkins, no centerpiece. Just a wide open swath and 13 staring faces. Directly opposite you, in the center, Prince Kevin Jackson. To his left and his right, his Primogen Council. Annabelle, Critias, Rosa, and Khalid. Son Newberry, too. He does not, in this moment, look a prisoner, and judging by his face, you're not sure he even knows he's been accused. The other seats, circling back towards the front of the room, hold Alan Sovereign, the Seneschal, friends of the court, Marcel and Khadijah. Abraham Dusable sits there, as does Sierra Van Burris. Aside from yourselves, only 2 kindred are standing. The sheriff, Damien, and his hound, Alexa Santos. In this moment, positioned suspiciously close to your Malkavian friend. There are 4 chairs open nearest the door. The prince beckons you to them. Well, I don't think any further introductions are in order. The 3 of you know all of us, or at the very least you should. So let's get down to business.
I nod and take a seat. We are here to do a job. I reach down into my bag, pull out my giant binder, and set it very calmly in front of me.
I'll also take a seat. I have my own evidence that I wish to share with the court. It's probably the same evidence that Ivy has, but it's definitely not as impressive as a binder. Part of my mind draws back to my training with Edith, where she tried to instill me with some confidence. The idea that you become someone else in situations, so I am trying to muster up like a persona that can handle this.
Does anything in particular come to mind?
No person in particular, but I want to visualize someone who is strong and confident.
And what about you, Rebecca? On the topic of strong and confident women.
Stiffly, I'll take my seat. I don't have video cameras or binders of evidence, but I do have the word of a kindred who has faced Newberry's actions on a deeply personal level. And while it's not nearly as put together as the other two's, I think it carries just as much weight. And the council be damned if anything happens to him after this. Zion, that is.
Once the coterie is seated, the prince continues. Again, I appreciate all of you being here on such short notice. The matters facing our city are grave and many, and it does me no small amount of pride to know that I can count on each and every one of you to see that Chicago remains the strongest domain in the Camarilla. In that spirit, we turn our attention now to one of the more grave matters facing our city in the last week. As you all know, I'm sure by now, there was an attack on the Diamond Yama Hotel not soon after our La Sombra friends were admitted by the voice of democracy to join the Camarilla in this city. What I'm sure you also all know is this particular hotel belongs to our guest, Sierra Van Burris. In the last week, I have been giving my full attention to ensuring that the investigations of our mortal friends do not uncover evidence that would threaten the Masquerade. At the same time, I have trusted my 3 associates here, loyal servants of the court, to investigate this cause and tell us who is responsible. Are you prepared to make that accusation this evening?
We are, Prince Jackson, yes.
I will remind everyone present that although this is not formally Elysium, there will be consequences for poor behavior. Whatever these 3 young kindred have to say, we will each listen to attentively, politely, and give the full weight of our logical faculties to their conclusions. I will tolerate no outbursts in this moment, and God forbid any use of disciplines or violence. On that, I'm sure we can all agree. We are the civilized ones after all. There's an assortment of nods and affirmations from various kindred in the room. Very well, then. If you would enlighten this court and its friends, who is responsible for the violence at the Diamond Yama Hotel?
Son Newberry.
Whatever reaction comes from the rest of the Primogen or guests present is drowned out by howling, joyous, mocking laughter from the Malkavian Primogen. What? Really? Me? I have to say, I'm I think more than any of us, I'm excited to hear this. The prince turns, gives him just a look. Not to interrupt the proceedings, Prince, of course, due respect, but surely you understand that comical accusations merit a comical reaction. Elsewhere at the table, skepticism seems to have spread. None are so bold as Mr. Newberry, but this is not what I would call a friendly audience. Critias grumbles. Newberry of all people. Now I understand that none of us are saints, but to think that he would jeopardize the Camarilla by lashing out against them is preposterous. Rosa, less sitting in her chair as lazily draped over it, merely shrugs. Oh, I'm sure any of us are capable of it. If it is Newberry, I don't know that I'd be surprised. No offense. Newberry grits his teeth. Oh, offense taken. Annabelle reaches over, pats him gently on the shoulder. Now, son, if you're as innocent as I'm sure you are, then this should merely be a performance on their part. Prince Jackson takes control of his meeting again. Yes, and if I might close the floor to public comments, we might be able to hear the evidence that they have to present. There's a small, quiet pause. Before we proceed, though, the three of you understand the gravity of the accusations you're making.
My hands remain clasped in front of me. Yes, Prince Jackson. Absolutely. We do not make this accusation lightly.
Does Miss LaRue speak for the two of you as well?
She took the words out of my mouth. We are prepared to back it up with evidence that we have gathered.
I'll try to untense myself the best I can. We wouldn't bring it up if we didn't believe it fully.
Newberry can't help himself. Oh, well, I'm glad you're confident, because the consequences for this are going to be severe. Jackson tuts again. Mr. Newberry, if you would, please. He turns his eyes back to the three of you. Very well. You have the floor.
I open my binder and smooth my hand across it, laying it flat. Let us begin.
So naturally, our first step was to look into Charles Dawson, and we found a load of evidence, but it was all manufactured. And this fabricated information led us on a cookie trail to Gary, Indiana, where the very same coterie that was captured on camera in the Diamond Yama setting up the explosives are from.
From there, we were able to locate where Charles Dawson, or supposed Charles Dawson, was being held by none other than the Second Inquisition. This Charles told us where they were to meet with their employer, Lakeshore Hospital, where yet another kindred, Zion, was being held hostage as well, by Newberry.
Newberry at this point has folded his arms across his chest, leaning back in his chair, not scowling, struggling a bit to hold his displeasure back. The other Primogen have reacted with interest, at the very least. Annabelle regards you with lazy curiosity. Rosa appears interested, if only because, regardless of the outcome, something very interesting is going to happen. Critias takes a measured look. Khalid, as always, is unreadable. The rest of the kindred in the room, those not of the Primogen Council, know better than to reveal their hand, save for Sierra Van Burris, who looks quite pleased with herself. The prince nods. Okay, one thing at a time. Let's start with the fire. You said Charles Dawson, allegedly someone looking like Charles Dawson, placed charges.
Yes, that is correct. There were 4 individuals that entered the Diamond Jama the night of the fire. We shall refer to them as the Gary coterie, as they hail from Gary, Indiana. These 4 kindred, one of whom was assuming the visage of Charles Dawson, enter the Diamond Jama and enter the rooms that were later found to have the incendiary devices in them. This is all captured on footage that we received from Sierra Van Burris herself. And I gesture to Schmendrick, who has been in possession of the footage this whole time.
At that prompting from Ivy, I will get to my feet and press play on the DVD player, allowing my saved evidence to play for the entire room to see.
Well, Khalid bristles at this footage, that's for sure. He's known Charles a great many years, and seeing his face tied to this is obviously unsettling. Even with the assurances that you've given that this is not Charles, you can't deny that is an incredibly accurate forgery.
So as the tape continues on, I do catch the expression on Khaled's face. The little bristling of attention as he sees Charles on the video, and I address the room with a, "Looks a lot like Charles, doesn't it?" Though we have proof to indicate that it's not Charles, and you'll see it in this tape here. This was taken at Ballard Industries. From this piece of evidence, and I will start the next segment of it, you can see the Charles look-alike clearly drinking from what seems to be a blood magic potion. And for a little coup de grace, I will pause the video exactly on the moment where the flask is being drank from. I am no expert, so I will turn this over to Ivy for further explanation.
We all know that blood magic is incredibly powerful. Anybody with enough skill in the art could craft a potion that allows them to appear as somebody else. I believe that this is what we have in front of us here. Now, while I'm not insinuating that son Newberry would have made this potion himself, it is known that with the correct contacts and resources, something like this is not impossible to get your hands on.
At this point, tensions in the room are very quickly rising. Prince Jackson appears like he's ready to let you go on when your proceedings are interrupted by a single knock on the door. The prince snaps his attention forward. This is something he's been expecting, and if you look closely, you can see just a little bit of gratitude on his face, as if what's about to come will give him the breathing room he needs to bring the temperature in the room down. Yes, we're ready. The same ghoul from before opens the door. Introducing Joshua Crozier of Clan Banu Hakim. And a familiar face walks into the room.
Greetings all. I apologize for being late, but I believe I have amassed the evidence that we need to close this thing.
Prince Jackson picking up. Yes, Mr. Crozier has been tending to a very specific question that has been burning in my mind. If his initial reports are correct, I believe it also has bearing on this case. Mr. Crozier, you have the floor.
Right. I was dispatched by Prince Jackson to investigate the human sprawl between here and Milwaukee for infiltrators, agitators, refugees, the usual. I found evidence of a few kindred fitting that profile, and naturally started looking into them. What I did not expect was that they would tie into this little incident so directly. In short, little to my surprise, and little to the surprise of many, I'm sure, Rogue Tremere are behind this little kerfuffle that we have on our hands.
Prince Jackson stiffens slightly. You don't mean to insinuate they're behind the entirety of events, do you, Mr. Crozier?
Not the entirety, no. But, well, I guess I should start from the beginning.
Dusable is very attentive in this moment. Yes, now I am keenly interested in where these things are going to go.
I would be lying if I said I sat there without any interest myself. But of course the Banu Hakim would blame the Tremere.
You all make yourselves so blameworthy. I clear my throat. Right. So the big question on everyone's minds in these proceedings is how someone gets their hands on magic of this magnitude. In short, there have been rogue Tremere hiding out, making money by selling their blood magic to those who would use it to their own ends. I expect that these Tremere didn't ask too many questions. Son Newberry purchased this material from a Tremere by the name of Montrose Hopkins.
Dusable is palms flat, leaning forward on the table. Ivy, you've never seen the Regent this angry. That's impossible. Montrose, he's filth that we're glad to have out of the pyramid, and there's no universe in which he would be capable of making something this sophisticated. He lacks the dedication and the knowledge, to say nothing of a proper laboratory.
Oh, I agree. You're completely right. I mean, if he had those kind of capabilities, well, he might have stood more of a chance. No, he had some help. Another rogue Tremere by the name of Eric, though.
This brings a chill to Dusable's face. Eric Tho is a well-known Tremere in the city. Some say she should be regent. She's as powerful as Dusable, more politically keen, but also extremely well known for her distance from the court. She participates as much as she needs to, makes a nominal showing of loyalty to the Camarilla, but her anarch sympathies are well known, and there are few among the Chantry who believe the lip service she pays to the pyramid. Prince Jackson is obviously upset by this revelation. He turns to the regent. Dusable, you know both of these names, and I'm going to ask you very pointedly and expect a clear, honest answer. Is a Tremere under your jurisdiction as Regent of Chicago working with outside agents to undermine the rule in this city? Dusable is sputtering. But no, it's impossible. Of course, I'm sure your hound has done his most loyal work, and I would never question his judgment, the Banu Hakim, of course, with their obsession for justice. But just as many of us have been fooled by what has happened on this videotape, surely that is also the case. There has to be something else going on. Bring him before me. Where is he now? This Montrose, I will question him myself and get to the bottom of this.
Well, about that. As careful as I was, of course, a hound arriving in the vicinity of people who have things to hide, especially one from Chicago, well, that makes waves. Hopkins figured that getting the drop on me would be enough, and I will say you gave me a good fight, as you can, well, see, and I gesture at the fact that I have clearly had this shit beat out of me. The element of surprise was not enough for him, and it's hard to appreciate a bane, but sometimes they come out to our advantage, yeah?
You mean to tell me you have committed one of the most hideous crimes known to our people in a way that jeopardizes the truth behind this investigation?
You mean to tell me that you are this concerned for an outlaw from your own clan? Really, I didn't know I didn't know you had it in you.
The prince steps up. I think what my hound means to say is that being outside of the chantry, unless, Regent, you intend to claim these Tremere as your own? Dusable is silent. I thought not. So as kindred living outside of my own domain and undeclared, I assume, to the Prince of Milwaukee, they are under no protection from the Camarilla. And if faced with defending his own unlife, my hound succumbed to the well-known bane of his clan, so be it. The tone in Jackson's voice makes clear this is a futile area of inquiry for the Regent. He turns back to Joshua. Lacking a subject to interrogate, however, we obviously cannot take your word alone. Have you brought evidence to support these claims, Mr. Crozier?
In life, Prince Jackson, I was a detective. And the very first thing drilled into my head in detective school is you don't even bother showing up unless you have the evidence. With that, I reach into my coat pocket and pull out the correspondence that will prove the guilt of all accused parties.
You are technically Damien's subordinate. He makes the rare move of circling around the table to take those things from you and presents them to Prince Jackson. The letters are coded vaguely, euphemistic when necessary, but any kindred can read between the lines and see they tell the truth. Promises made in son Newberry's handwriting in exchange for the ability to change one's face. Next to it, academic exchanges between old friends. It seems, based on the evidence provided, Dusable was correct. Hopkins had no chance of making this on his own, and instead offered a boon to Erictho in exchange for her creating the concoction. Annabelle is smiling. Well, that answers that question, doesn't it? And she turns, gleefully smug, to Newberry. Prince Jackson, again, speaks up. Do you have anything further to offer us, Mr. Crozier?
I think on it a moment. Nothing relating to the case, no.
Very well. As always, this city appreciates your service. You'll understand if we have to continue without your assistance, yes?
Of course. And even as I say this, I direct a look toward Schmendrick, Rebecca, Ivy, that just screams, "We'll talk later."
Right. Well, I hope we will all put this new evidence alongside the other accusations made. The three of you, he looks to the coterie. If you'll continue.
I try not to react too much to Joshua's arrival. At this point, since they've had a moment to linger on the footage of this Charles lookalike drinking the potion, I turn to the court and address them once again. We have our Charles imposter and the Gary coterie stealing a bunch of chemicals from a Ballard Industries warehouse. Highly flammable things. So it would make sense that they would take these to start a fire, probably in the Diamond Yama itself. But I think we've had enough chats on the ifs and maybes of this Charles lookalike. Why don't we bring her in? Prince Jackson, would you be willing to invite Michaela in now?
The prince nods, turns to Damien. Will you bring our Nosferatu friend in? In a few moments, he has exited the room, retrieved the guest, and returned with Michaela. Unfortunately for Michaela, whatever concoction she ingested, it has not worn off. So far as anyone in the room is concerned, until she opens her mouth, that's Charles. Michaela looks equal parts nervous to be in front of the most powerful kindred in Chicago, and weirdly confident about the role she's about to play in bringing Sun to justice. She's had a chip on her shoulder this whole time, and being manipulated by Newberry into committing this crime has not sat well on her. If she plays her cards right here, maybe she'll end up in Chicago after all.
Would you please state your name for the Primogen Council?
I'm Michaela. The voice coming out of that face does not belong to that face. Dusable looks impressed. The visage, at least, had fooled him. Elsewhere around the table, the mood is more perturbed. This is unsettling.
So you are not Charles Dawson, then?
Oh, no. Thank God, no. I mean, respectfully, to the court.
But you were hired to assume his visage and commit crimes on behalf of the gentleman across the table there. And I'm gesture to Newberry.
Yeah. I mean, not me specifically. He contacted a friend of mine. His name's Zion. Zion said he met with someone, a Chicago Kindred, a bigwig, promised him that if we went along with this, we'd get to live in Chicago, like titles, be important, be official. He gave us all the information that we needed to pull off the heist at the chemical warehouse, all the details on the Diamond Yama, and said that when we were done, we were supposed to meet him at Lakeshore Hospital.
So we have a member of the Primogen Council approaching Kindred from an impoverished and notably underrepresented political area. He offers them a deal they cannot turn down, promises of recognition and titles. I would ask you as members of the Chicago court if this is the sort of image that we project.
Well, Michaela may have not made it to Lakeshore Hospital, but we sure did. After all, that's where Zion was supposed to meet everybody. They were all supposed to reconvene at this location. We did find Zion. And only Zion. I turn and look at Schmendrick as I pull out a stack of papers from my binder and hand them to her.
I'm actually kind of thankful as Ivy hands me the photographs. I'd done the same thing, but I know she would have done a more meticulous job of printing them out. So,
or at the very least, put them on more expensive paper.
Exactly. They probably laminated and everything. I walk the images now over to the table and just kind of, with a flourish of my hand, display them all for the Primogen to see. Even hand a couple around just for them to look at. So what you're looking at is the little slices of horror we found in Lakeshore Hospital, the dementated people, Zion's personal quarters where he had been kept for a couple days, and just the deterioration you can tell his mind went through in that time frame. I'll kind of go down the line explaining each photo as I go. This was the first woman we found. When we first encountered her, I was barely sure that she was human anymore, and she slammed herself up against the glass, and the wretched creature, I had never seen anything like it before. The next photo I hand directly to Khalid. I'm sure he's aware of the situation at this point, but it shows exactly the kind of suffering you would expect. Emaciated humans, barely a shell of their former existence. And then the next one to Annabelle, just kind of hitting home their more compassionate sides as I go into detail about these individuals as well. There's more, everyone. We had more than 36 people. All of them were victims of Sun Newberry.
Well, there's no amount of poker face that can hide how Khalid and Annabelle feel about this. Khalid has always spoken emphatically about the need to treat humans better, and Annabelle is well known for her sensitivities about these kind of things. Never one for violence, never one for suffering. Holding images, as Schmendrick gives these horrible details, obviously touches them at the core of whatever sensibilities they still have as kindred. As for the others, that is going to hinge on how hard Schmendrick has sold it.
After everyone has taken a moment to sort of digest these images, I say, I can verify these images as being 100% legitimate. The lighting is consistent throughout. There's no blurring and abstraction around certain points of the images. It fits all of the niches of being genuine, and it even passes forensic image analysis. I can give you the data to back this up, but it is 100% authentic.
Will you roll charisma and technology for me?
So, I've rolled, but I've only got one success, so I would like to roll willpower and really drive that home.
You can see many of the older kindred starting to glaze over. Technology is not their strong suit, and fabricated, not fabricated, who knows? So you double down. What does your willpower have to say about it?
My willpower grants me one more success.
2 total. Not a hugely impressive number, but it's better than 1. If minds at the table have been changed, that will be news to you based on their reactions.
It's always difficult to prove something to people, especially when they don't have the same sort of technical know-how as I do. It's like teaching my father how to use a computer. As far as he was concerned, it was a magic box that sometimes smoke came out of, and that meant it was broken. So I attribute my failings here not to me failing to explain it, but them failing to understand the nuances. Oh, I have, I guess. Regardless, if they want more tangible evidence, I think now would be a good time to usher in Zion for questioning. He might be a little more convincing than a couple of pictures. Before addressing the court, I turn to look at Ivy and Rebecca and say, under my breath, do you think it's time for Zion?
I've been trying to keep up this professional veneer in front of the court, speaking not in slang, using full sentences, whatever, but the moment Schmendrick mentions Zion, all of that melts away. I already had feelings about bringing him here, but this early and with him in the room, I just look at Schmendrick and say, how long do we need him in for?
I don't know. I understand the fear. We need to be prepared for anything, but he's going to be pretty convincing, I think, one way or another.
I've been trying to keep up this professional veneer in front of the court. Use full sentences, address them, use titles and whatnot, but when Schmendrick brings up Zion, something in me just runs cold. Do we really need to bring him into this right now, with him in the room?
I put my hand on Rebecca's shoulder. Look, I'm honestly as shocked to see him here as you are, but part of our plan was to bring Zion in and to let him talk. And
in front of the man who took everything from him?
I know. But Schmendrick, do you think it's absolutely necessary? You don't think your pictures did a good enough job?
They fell flat. If they could see Zion's reaction, I think it will do a lot of convincing. I know it's tough, but he'll get over it. He's gonna have to, one way or another.
I pinched the bridge of my nose, close my eyes, and then open them again. Rebecca, I don't know if there's any other piece of evidence that's going to be as impactful as Zion's presence in this room.
The prince clears his throat. Ladies, are we moving forward? Do we need to recess for a moment?
No. We would like to call upon another witness.
As you like.
Once I've stated to the court that we're bringing in another witness, I get up from the table and, quickly as possible, I walk out the door to go get Zion from the parlor.
As you're taking your leave, I just say good luck and take a seat and wait for your return.
Thank you, Schmendrick.
So Rebecca arrives in the parlor. Zion is sitting politely. He's flipping through the pages of some book, thick, leather-bound, no pictures. You don't think he's reading it so much as going through the motions.
Hey, Zion, what you reading there?
I don't know. He looks around. You see him peering around the corner. He waves you a little closer.
I'll get closer.
The bald man who's like in charge of all the other guys in the suits, I was pacing around and he said he didn't want me to touch anything because I was getting kind of bored and being curious. And so he asked me to sit down and he gave me this and said, just read this until someone finds you. But this book is really boring.
Despite the grimness of the situation, I have to suppress a bit of a giggle. It's understandable. I was in his position a few nights ago. Here, can I tell you a secret too, Zion?
Okay.
Everything about the Camarilla is boring.
Oh, is there a book on that? Because if there is, I don't want to read it.
Don't worry, you're not going to have to read any more books after this. Or at least we'll find some fun ones, but right now, I need you to come with me. We're going to talk to some people, okay?
Okay, do I have to bring the book? Because I don't want the bald guy to be mad at me if I don't have the book. He told me I had to read it.
Oh, here, how about you give it to me? I can hold on to it for you.
Okay. He presses it into your hands. Apparently, the chief butler thought Zion would be amused by the 4th volume in the complete academic history of the popes.
The fuck's a pope?
You can read the book and find out.
There isn't time for that. I mean, as much as I would like to read through it and keep Zion out of that room with that fucking bastard, but I'll gently lead him and the book to the trial room.
While Rebecca's gone, I turn to Schmendrick. I don't know about this, Schmendrick. I don't have a good feeling about this.
With Rebecca here, he might be good.
And if he's not?
If he's not, let's hope Rebecca can restrain him. Do you have any witchy tricks to keep him steady if something happens?
No, I don't.
That's okay. There's no Nosferatu trick for it either.
As you have your own little sidebar, you can see across the table Newberry also whispering to his left and his right. Thin treads of conversation spreading amongst the various Primogen. Occasionally you'll catch them glancing in your direction, speaking among each other. It's quiet. You catch important words here and there. Impossible. Disbelief. Unprofessional. Technobabble. You hear other words. Fits his pattern of behavior. Only a Malkavian could. All of this, your conversation and the others, are interrupted when Rebecca enters the room. In one hand, a gigantic, it's 700 pages, easy, tome. And in the other hand, Zion's hand, as she leads him into the room.
I'm shocked at the size of the book in Rebecca's hand. Just utterly flabbergasted.
The important question is it one Ivy has read before?
That depends. Ivy, have you read Owen Chadwick's History of the Popes? It's 1830 to 1914. This one covers Gregory the 16th, Pius the 9th, Leo the 13th, and Pius the 10th.
Unfortunately, I'm not up to date on my papal history. It's a shame.
I guess that settles that question. Rebecca, do you introduce your guest?
Even though I'm holding his hand at the moment, I can't make him seem too reliant on me. That's going to undermine him as a witness. I turn to Zion and say, "Could you state your name for the court?"
To this point, Zion has been staring with great interest at his shoes, avoiding eye contact with the room. He's a shy child. What do you expect? But you ask that question, and he mumbles in the direction of the floor. Yeah, my name is Zion. If you took this moment and played it back in your memory later, you could see the exact moment he makes eye contact with the prince as he raises his eyes from the floor. And there's a flicker as they transit just a few degrees to the left, catching Khalid, the Primogen, down that way. And then they sweep to the right, and disaster strikes. Whatever thought was bubbling up to continue out of Zion's mouth is interrupted by hideous, terrified, from the depths of the abyss, shrieking. And Zion hurls himself against the door, clawing at it, screaming. No, it's him. No, you can't make. No, why that man? No, he's a bad man. He's gonna do bad. No, I gotta let me out. And he's just scratching, claws out, panicked, throwing the whole of his body weight against the door.
Got that immediate flare of guilt for bringing him in here. Maybe I didn't have to bring him in here, but no time for moralizing right now. I need to get Zion feeling better, safe. As he's clawing and throwing himself against the door, I rush over and grab both of his wrists and press him up against me, and I guess we could call it bear hug. Just trying to, maybe through the force of my own will, calm him down.
All right, roll strength and melee. Sorry, strength and brawl.
Okie doke. 6 successes.
Zion rolls 5 as he struggles against you. You have just enough margin to keep a hold of him. Whether that's good or bad depends on whether you wanted to be on the other side of the door or not. Because Zion is in the throes of something far more powerful than even Rebecca's muscles. His beast will not allow him to be in proximity with this man. The door finally bursts open, shattering at the lock, the two of you tumbling out into the marble on the other side in the hallway, barreling through the ghoul who was guarding the door in that moment. And it is only by the thinnest hair that you manage to keep a hold of him and prevent him from running speed of light down the hallway away from this place.
Right, Zion, I need you to calm down, okay? He's not going to do anything to you. I'm right here, Shiashike. Just... Here, can you count the tile for me? Just please calm down.
There's no reaching him in this moment. He is in the throes of terror frenzy, and your attention to him prevents you from hearing what Schmendrick and Ivy witness. Prince Jackson shoots up from his chair, turns to Rebecca. Prince Jackson shoots up from his chair, turns immediately to Rosa, and says, "Hernandez, fix this." The gangrel Primogen uncurls from her position on the chair, stands up, exits the room. Rebecca, you see her approaching, steps measured, almost bored. And she reaches out to Zion with her voice. Now, that's not how we behave in public. Calm down, you little monster. You can hear that kindred edge in her voice. You recognize the tremble of protean, making the hairs on the back of your neck rise just a bit as she uses her power to reach in, find Zion's beast, and cow it.
It's terrifying.
The supernatural terror has fled this man. The normal terror, the mortal kind, the fear for your life and livelihood, the kind that stares you in the face when forced to confront your accuser. There's no gangrel magic that'll fix that.
I'm not intending to put him through that again. Beast aside, he's broken.
Schmendrick? Ivy? I'm very curious to see what the look on your faces looks like.
Honestly, this was a lot more explosive than I was expecting, but not outside of the realm of possibility.
I mean, I didn't have a good feeling. This is kind of worse than I was expecting his reaction to be, but logically I think it all tracks. But where Rebecca feels a lot of emotions towards Zion, I think it's easier for me to separate from that and try and remain calm and collected in this moment.
At this point, I will stand and address the court and say apologies for Zion's outburst. He was actually the one that drew the faces of his tormentor on the walls of his cell. And being in the same room with him, of course, is just a little bit jarring for him.
Zion is still recovering from the effects of dementation. The effects that he suffered, of course, at Lakeshore Hospital. Only through sufficiently strong blood were we able to calm his mind down enough to even talk to him, but it's clear that the effects still linger.
Will you roll manipulation and occult, please?
I sure will. That is one success, but I would like to use a willpower to re-roll because I'm not quite sure they're understanding exactly what I'm saying in this moment. It's the tech thing, but with blood magic, right?
It's a common theme.
It is.
As far as they're concerned, it's just a gangrel being feral.
Or as we call it, Tuesday.
That's 2 additional successes for a total of 3.
You do a slightly better job of clarifying yourself. Maybe you have to use smaller words or walk people less familiar with the Malkavian arts through the process. Unfortunately, there's only one other practitioner of dementation in this room, and Newberry with an oozing politeness. It's gross to hear him open his mouth and let honeyed words spill out, explaining that this is a terrible misunderstanding. There are so many reasons why someone with a broken mind could react like this to stimuli. And I understand if our Tremere friend has such limited experience with the Malkavian arts, as she calls them, to think that we would be capable of this kind of thing. But these damages, my friends, fellow Primogen, you know better than most what even the most powerful Malkavians are capable of. I, of course, am more than willing to grant a Malkavian might have done this, but to pin it on me, that seems a bit premature. Rest assured, though, once this trial has run its course, I will be putting the full weight of my authority as Primogen into finding the true culprit. Newberry is a master of manipulation. He is an expert in etiquette. And you can see the conservative nature of these Primogen. You can see the way he plucks at their desire for stability and the status quo, giving them the slightest excuse to not have to take a radical action, to just let this slide. He rolls 7 successes.
Oh.
Oh.
We are up against Primogen.
Mm-hmm. Respectfully, Primogen, why exactly do you feel like this accusation is a bit premature?
All we've seen at this moment is someone wearing Charles's face, a power I cannot perform, attacking a hotel, which until this evening I did not realize was associated with the La Sombra, and someone who is terrified of vampires. I understand you've written yourself a glorious narrative in your head, filled with all the circumstantial clues necessary to pin the blame on me. But I think something else is happening. I think you recognize my resistance to the La Sombra in purely political terms. And I think, as lackeys of the prince, you are doing your best to see his own plans to fruition. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Our prince is absolutely within his rights to recruit kindred such as yourself to help with his project. But those of us Primogen, established on this council and given the weight of responsibility for guiding this city against the worst of its modernist impulses, we owe it to everyone to make sure that justice is seen through and that conspiracy theories don't run the day.
If I completely lacked self-control, I'd be rolling my eyes right now. This man's words are just poisonous. Without really addressing what he's saying, I walk over to the table and pick up the beautiful pictures of Zion's paintings and say, "No, not him. Please, I need to leave." And I try to verbatim echo what Zion was saying before he scrambled out of the room, making sure to show everyone the picture, the lovely paintings, and how very much like Newberry they are.
Well, let's test your acting chops. Will you roll wits and performance for me?
It might be a waste, but can I blood surge?
If you'd like.
Seems like an opportune moment for it because I'm pretty angry.
So make a rouse check.
So that is a hunger gain.
Oh, the beast cares little for dramaturgy, but it grants you power all the same.
Give it time, it'll learn to love the dramaturgy. So, unfortunately, even with the blood surge, I only got 2 successes, but I wouldn't hate rolling a willpower reroll.
They're your resources. Spend them as you like.
That was a good gamble. I have 5 successes total.
Individually, the two of you are no match for this god-tier used car salesman of a charismatic slime. But Ivy, with your explanation garnering 3 successes, in this case aided by Schmendrick's performance with 5, will give you 8 against Newberry's 7. And you see him make a tactical retreat in this social moment.
Whew. Okay.
Good job, guys. That was cool.
I know. Good job. Good job, Schmendrick.
Yeah, I like that.
With Newberry returning fully to his seat, the prince once again wrestles control of his meeting back. Right then, so before that outburst and the destruction of my property, where were we? In the background, you see the prince's ghoul fidgeting with the doors. They won't stay shut now. The latches have been blown open by a whirlwind of kindred strength. He's doing the best he can.
I haven't broken my eye contact with Newberry as he went on this tirade, even when Schmendrick interjected. Primogen, it is possible that there are other kindred in this city that can do what you do, but I don't believe that is the case because we found him at a location that is owned by you, perhaps? Because you see, while we were there, one of your ghouls interrupted us. At this point, I turned to the rest of the council. Using an extremely old thaumaturgy ritual and a not insignificant amount of incredibly rare reagents, I was able to discern that one of the guards who stopped by Lakeshore Hospital that evening is a ghoul of our very own son Newberry.
Newberry turns to the prince, looking for permission to speak, not asking aloud, but the prince is a step ahead of him. He turns to your regent. Mr. Disable, does such a ritual exist? I'm not so proud as to admit I lack a complete understanding of your arts, but as I understand it, these rituals are only useful for detecting Kindred's lineage and shouldn't work on ghouls. Disable is obviously not interested in being in the middle of this. You see him wearing that, "Oh God, why'd they call on me?" face, familiar among academics. These things are not impossible, my prince, but they are difficult. I have not personally witnessed evidence of Miss LaRue's talents. I cannot speak authoritatively as to whether this would escape her ability, but she does come highly recommended from her superiors in the pyramid. It is not outside the realm of possibility. I wouldn't file that under ringing endorsement, but the regent hasn't undermined you too badly. The prince then turns back to you. Would you mind then, Miss LaRue, explaining what is so rare and powerful about this ritual that it allowed you to do what I understand to be impossible?
Of course, Prince Jackson. You are absolutely correct. Under normal circumstances, these rituals would only work on Kindred. However, with the addition of white plasm, we're able to boil down the ghoul's blood into its core components, including the Kindred elements. It was this element that pointed me to son Newberry.
Prince Jackson doesn't bother looking at Disable. He merely raises an eyebrow. White plasm.
Yes, sir.
You have Critias's attention at this point. A rare reagent indeed, quite difficult to come by. However, I would be remiss in my duties as a neutral arbiter of justice in this matter if I did not inform my co-jurors that white plasm is a thing of the Umbra, an arena that, I do not need to remind you, is mastered by the very La Sombra who are at the center of this. Prince Jackson returns his attention to you. Is it possible, Miss LaRue, that the answer you received was one you wanted to get? Whispers from ghosts, etc.?
No, sir. I do not believe that this is the case.
Well, that is an explanation that's going to require intelligence and blood sorcery.
I would like to blood surge for this. I think that this needs to be very, very convincing.
If you believe the stakes are high enough to warrant the expenditure, then by all means.
Getting a little hungry.
I needn't remind you this would be a terrible place to fall victim to hunger frenzy.
Yes, that is correct.
What's your hunger sitting at now?
3?
Safe enough.
For now. That is 5 successes.
Prince Jackson pays attention. He's not an expert in thaumaturgy, but he gives you the privilege of at least attempting to understand. And as you walk him through the details, explain the different ways the Umbra works and doesn't, at the end, you see him coming along. He appears convinced. Very well, then. This Umbra magic aside, I believe the point you were making is that one of Newberry's staff, we'll say, was responsible for patrolling this facility?
Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct. One of the Primogen schools patrolling a building in the Primogen's territory should be enough to prove that he's at the heart of all of this. In a perfect world, I'd have more witnesses to bring up, the rest of the Gary coterie to call in front of you to corroborate the stories that we've told today. But I can't. And if you'd like to know why, read his aura.
You see a ripple pass through the room. Everyone here can read between the lines, and they know what you're accusing him of. That is no small crime. There are few things on this planet that will motivate Kindred to justice, at least in the Camarilla, faster than accusations of diablerie. Of course, those accusations also require a certain finesse. It's quite rude to read someone's aura without their permission, without their consent, or without a good reason. Will you roll charisma and etiquette for me?
I think I have to blood surge, and I don't want to. I mean, I do, but it's a risk, but I think it's worth the risk.
We are defined by our choices in moments of crisis.
Ugh. Rousing success. 3 successes? But I would like to use another willpower and reroll 2 of those dice.
If you insist.
1 more success for a total of 4.
We'll keep that result in your pocket for a second. Rebecca, as the courtroom drama unfolds, you're still in the hallway with Zion. This man, quietly trembling in your arms, knelt upon the marble. Rosa hasn't left. She's still monitoring the situation. Now that Zion is not a threat to her well-being, she creeps closer. My God, I've never seen someone lash out like that. It's all true, isn't it?
I look Rosa right in the eyes. It is. You know how our blood, what it does to us. Nobody other than Newberry could have done this to him.
You know, Rebecca, I believe you, and I'm sure that makes you feel a lot better. But that room, even if they believe you, they don't need to be convinced that Newberry did it. They have to be convinced it's worth dealing with.
I know. That's why I've got a witch and sewer rat with me. I trust that they're making the case more palatable to them.
Yeah, I think you're going to need more friends than that, aren't you?
Not sure where the Lasombras, if they'd even trust her, and they're the only ones I've got in the city at the moment. At least ones that Prince would be willing to listen to.
All right. Look, I hate this political bullshit as much as you do. I know we have that in common, and I think some of your new friends that you're trying to pal around with, they feel the same way.
I'm gonna raise my eyebrows at that. I had no idea she knew about Anita in that way. Is she talking about that night?
Oh, did she mention Anita? It's weird your mind leapt there.
Word travels round town fast is all.
Does it?
From what I've seen.
Okay. Well, barring interjection on your part, she continues, I know why you're here. Everyone in the city knows why you're here. It's pretty transparent, single-minded. I like that about you. I still have to play this game, though. So I'm going to ask you something now. I'm not proud of it. I don't like treating you the way they treat you, but you know how it goes. Quid pro quo, right?
Right. Tithes and whatnot.
Tithes. No, I wouldn't use that word. Have you met Dennis yet?
Heard of him. Can't say we've talked.
Yeah, he's good people. He's got his own problems, but he taught me something about you and yours He said that no matter what, clan takes care of clan. Is that right?
Tribe might be different, but family comes first. Always.
Right. Well, that's why I'm gonna help you. Your friends in there are outmatched. I know where it's going. I'm willing to tilt those odds. In exchange for that, yeah, we're gonna hunt some werewolves, but you're also gonna help me with another thing. We can talk about that later. Clan helping clan.
Sister helping sister. I agree to those terms.
I'm glad you see it my way. Well, I'm gonna get back in there. You should too, as soon as, she gestures to Zion. This situation's under control.
Zion's gonna be fine. He wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. I'll make sure he's alright. And Rosa, thank you.
Oh, don't thank me yet. Wait and see what the outcome of our future adventures are.
I look forward to it.
It is at this point that Rosa Hernandez returns to the room just in time to catch the tail end of Ivy's accusation. She wastes no time, doesn't play any etiquette games. She doesn't even look at Ivy as she circles the table to where her chair waits. Oh, so you think Newberry ate him?
I'm a little startled because Rosa never speaks, much less with that sort of attitude.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not say it right? She looks around the room. Are you accusing Newberry of violating the 6th tradition?
I pull my shoulders back. Yes, I am.
Okay. Hey, great. Prince, as I understand the rules, as a Primogen, I'm allowed to call for investigations into these kind of things, right? I still possess some kind of authority. Clan Gangrel, respectfully, requests we see what Azora has to say. Annabelle, that's your thing, right? So, Kevin, you can give her permission and we can get on with this? She takes a seat. The prince is fuming at her tone. You don't need dots and insight to see that he is upset with the way that she is handling things. Yes, Primogen do have that authority. Thank you, Miss Hernandez. He doesn't want to be in this bind now. And if your eyes cross to Newberry, he is visibly nervous. In fact, he bursts out. Oh, Primogen to Primogen then. Well, I also have rights as a Primogen to not be investigated on so spurious an urge, especially one poorly delivered by someone who only belongs to the court by the grace of Prince Jackson cuts him off. That's enough, Mr. Newberry. I accept Rosa's motion, but as you are correct, it deals with another Primogen. I would like a second before we order such a vulgar invasion of Mr. Newberry's privacy. Ivy, you've been hanging out with Annabelle, right?
Yes, I have.
How's that been going?
It's been going pretty well. Got a pretty good relationship, a little bit of a rapport. Why do you ask?
I'm just gonna test the bonds of your friendship.
Great.
Will you roll charisma and etiquette for me?
Sure. 2 successes?
Well, it seems you're in luck. Either Annabelle agrees with the central premise or isn't really interested in putting up a fight. She tosses you the slyest wink you have ever seen and raises her voice. Oh, you'll all be asking me to do it, of course, but I'm curious. If our dear gangrel friend is this animated by it, and after witnessing Zion's display, she reaches over, pats Son on the knee. You understand that. We just can't help but wonder the answer to the question. Right, darling? Newberry stews. Annabelle turns back to the prince. With your permission, of course, Prince. Jackson doesn't sigh, but you can see how bad he wants to. He nods. Very well. Annabelle, if you would. Annabelle makes quite the show of turning to Newberry. As close as they are, physically, politically, there's an uncomfortable sense of the familiar between them. Newberry stiffens, looking imperious and put upon. You see Annabelle narrow her eyes slightly, tracing an outline of his figure as if drawing a silhouette. She smiles. Oh, come on now, son. Relax. You have nothing to hide, right? And then you see her square her shoulders almost imperceptibly, reaching into something inside of herself. There you are. There it is. Son, sweetie, they're not going to like what I have to say. You've been very naughty. Newberry is silent. Well, it brings me no pleasure to report to the court that while our dear friend's emotional state is a roiling swirl of so many conflicting images, there is, in fact, evidence of a terrible crime. Recent, if the strength of those telltale black veins are to be believed. I don't think, Ivy, you've ever seen someone look so smug to reveal things. And as you are A, a Tremere, and B, have owned mirrors in the past, that must come as a surprise.
It does, but it's a pleasant one. I have a new goal, a new aspiration.
The prince takes this information in stride. Annabelle, for the sake of clarity in these proceedings, you see evidence of diablerie in Primogen Newberry's aura? Annabelle nods. Yes, that is correct. I have seen evidence that son Newberry has violated one of the most deeply held of our traditions. Critias, as you would expect, seems most turned by this evidence. He runs the institute which trains new kindred in these traditions. Of course, he takes them seriously. That doesn't mean the other Primogen are less swayed. It only speaks to the gravity this crime holds in the Brujah Primogen's mind. Prince Jackson continues. Yes, well, we will deal with that as we need to, Mr. Newberry. It does not, unfortunately, directly pertain to the crimes currently being discussed. The prince is walking a very careful line. Miss LaRue, Miss Schmendrick, if you'll continue. So the two of you have been given the floor. On the topic of floors, though, Rebecca, are you off the floor in the hallway yet? Have you deigned to rejoin us?
I have. Zion was easy enough to calm down. I don't like the amount of influence I have over him, but he's not saying Newberry again, that's for sure. So I'll return back into the room and take a seat alongside Ivy and Schmendrick.
I don't exactly give the council a whole lot of time to stew on this because I know the more time Newberry has, the more he'll whisper into the other Primogen's ears. It's better, in my opinion, to keep the evidence piling up against him. So with that, I'll take a stand and say, speaking of violations against the traditions, I've been trying not to grin this whole time, but a little smile slips here as I gesture once again to the photographs and say, only with the help of Primogen Khalid were we able to stop this catastrophe from becoming a horrible breach of the Masquerade.
Khaled nods. Yes, Schmendrick has incurred a boon in my service. I agreed to assist her in ensuring these humans merely appear as lost victims of a cruel society, as opposed to victims of a cruel Malkavian. The prince smiles. Thank you, Khaled, for your service to the city and the Camarilla. And to you as well, Schmendrick. Newberry can't help himself. Fine, yes, of course. I've committed crimes against our traditions. Everyone in this room has committed crimes against those traditions, and I will not be judged by a council of hypocrites. This sham, this farce, was called into order to raise the question of who attacked the Diamond Yama, and so far, all you have managed to prove is that I am only as bad as any of you. Now, if you have evidence to suggest that I hate the La Sombra so that I would risk my position on this council, my very unlife, that I would put myself at risk of final death to attack her, this woman, then by all means, share it. Otherwise, I would ask that the council handle these other indiscretions as a separate matter.
Actually, we do have evidence of repeated attempts against the La Sombra since they've arrived in Chicago. It's not just this that we're using to prove your guilt, Primogen. We have so much more. A repeated pattern of behavior. I take a moment to let that linger on the minds of the Primogen watching. I decide to break this silence by turning to Sierra and asking her quite pointedly, Sierra Van Burris, do you remember your first night in Chicago?
Yeah. I was met at the airport by 4 Kindred well below my station, taken to a rental house of questionable quality, and then, right when morning came, there were 4 assholes trying to burn me and my brother to death. Yes, those 4 Kindred showed great ingenuity in solving the situation. That matter has already been discussed by the court. Why do you ask?
Well, I just find it curious that someone has tried to take you out not once, but twice with fire. Luckily for us, after that situation, we were able to keep 2 of the arsonists. And with the help of Horatio Ballard, we were able to cleverly extract the truth of the situation from them. Anyone want to hazard a guess at what they said?
Oh, I don't know, some slimy, bite-smiled bastard who's not once but twice involved himself in the undermining of the Camarilla's beliefs and their guests? A Malkavian, maybe?
I smile broadly at Rebecca's answer and gesture towards the council. That is correct. I go over the next couple of details with a fine-tooth comb as I recount the interrogation with Horatio Ballard and Maya, down to the details that they gave us, explaining how Malenkov and Sierra looked, and who hired them.
Oh, this is not going to be a good role for you, but we'll get there. Well, you're doing your best to sell the details. For that, can I ask a charisma and investigation roll?
2 successes, which is actually really good for me.
Well, Schmendrick, the information, 100% solid. The part where it was extracted by Dominate by someone who they kind of don't really trust from people who have a whole lot to gain from cooperating with you. The skepticism at the moment is not in your favor.
See, that was my issue when I decided to ask the Ventru and the La Sombra for help. I can tell deep inside that I'm not very good at this sort of thing, and I sort of take a glance over to my cohorts. Little desperation in my eyes. Just waiting to see if one of them will come up and help me out on this.
I've tried playing their games. Schmendrick's tried playing their games. We've all been trying to play at this be nice and polite and listen to them. I slam both hands down on the table in the complete silence. What I think my comrade here is trying to explain is that we've got a pattern of a Primogen abusing his position in order to go against the Camarilla's will, the will of everyone else here. You just gonna let him sit there, do what he wants? Or do you want someone else to do it? Someone other than this court? Because I'm pretty sure everyone in this room knows what happens when princes can't handle their cities. Who comes knocking when the boss can't keep everyone in order? His boss.
Very well. Can you roll charisma and intimidation for me?
Considering how impassioned I am at the moment, I think I'm going to rouse the powers of my blood.
Very well.
That's a hunger gain. 5 successes.
Diplomacy comes in many forms. Sometimes there's a carrot, sometimes there's a stick, and for people in positions of power, there is no stick greater than the threat of a Justicar coming to town. At that point, the Camarilla doesn't care who did it. They only care who failed to stop it, who failed to control it, and everyone in this room enjoys their current position too much to let that happen. Rebecca's outburst obviously cuts through that conservative energy, and at this point, Schmendrick is right. The evidence is piling up. You've created a beautiful picture, circumstantially, yes, but a picture nevertheless explaining why Newberry would want to do this, how Newberry would do this, the different things that he's willing to do to get away with it once the plan has gone through. The idea of sharing a city with someone who would put every single kindred inside at risk, drawing in the Second Inquisition, drawing in mortal attention, openly attacking his equals with violence of that level. Blood sorcery, diablerie, open bald-faced lying in this place ostensibly devoted to truth. And all of that always at risk of escalation to the point where someone from overseas comes poking around. Prince Jackson spends a moment chewing on this, the information you've presented, the effect it will have on his own fate if Rebecca is correct. Yes, I'm sure everyone here will consider your words very carefully, Miss Mitchell. I think at this moment we've all heard enough. Unless there's something of special importance that has yet been shared.
As I look at Schmendrick and Rebecca and realize that no, we've exhausted everything that we brought to the table today, I gently lift the front of the binder, close it slowly, brushing my hands across the top, and then return my hands to their initially folded position and say, "No, sir, Prince Jackson. We rest our case."
Excellent. Then this council shall retire for deliberation. Friends, thank you for your attendance, but we will be limiting this to voting members of the Primogen Council. Schmendrick, Miss LaRue, Miss Mitchell, will you remain on the premises, please, until such a time as a verdict has been reached? Marcel, Mr. Dusable, Miss Van Burris, likewise. I'm sure there'll be things you want to hear after the fact. There's a shuffling of chairs and bodies, various people now departing through the still broken door. All you can do now is wait.
Once I'm certain we're alone enough, I just look to the other two in the room and say, I am so nervous.
If I could breathe, I would probably be trying to still my breath. I'd be hyperventilating, but At the moment, I'm going to offer comfort to Schmundrick and put an arm around her and say, we put our best foot forward. It depends if they decide it's worth their time, but just between the three of us, I think Rosa's on our side.
Yeah, the way she came back in, that was pretty obvious. Something to be thankful for at least, but still, if we failed, there's gonna be repercussions.
I don't think we're going to be able to stay in Chicago for much longer. How do you two feel about the desert?
I shoot Rebecca a look. Really? Really? The desert? Really?
I give Ivy an innocent look. What? I mean, Navajo Nation, big enough to hide 3 kindred.
Well, this seems as good a time as any to let you notice someone lurking just off screen. As Rebecca taunts Ivy with a return to desert lands, Joshua Crozier appears from whatever rock the prince had been keeping him under.
Before he really has a moment to speak, now that the trial has no longer proceeding, I can drop the charade and I just let out a squeal and run over to give him a hug.
I see it coming and accept it with open arms. Literally. Schmendrick, good to see you. How are you doing? Well, I know how you're doing, but good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Feels like too long.
Rebecca's not the hugging type, but I'd manage the biggest honor I can give, a sturdy pat on the shoulder. Hey Josh, been a minute.
Been a minute indeed. You all have been very busy.
Tell me about it. Still in a way I could convince you to go and take a bite out of Newberry after all this?
Oh fuck, believe me, the thought ran through my mind.
Interesting outcome, is all. I was hoping the court would come down a bit harder.
Yeah, well, I have things I can say about it, I have things I won't say about it.
Right, at the end of the night you have to go back to the prince. I don't blame you.
Once Rebecca and Schmendrick have both finished their back and forths with Josh and step aside from him, I walk straight up to him and punch his right shoulder. What the fuck, Josh?
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Funny. Very, very funny. You knew that you were coming to this. You knew that you had information. You had to have known we were working this. You couldn't even give us a call. You couldn't even give us a heads up.
Literally, no, I could not. Have you ever been on the Goblin Roads? They're not fun. Did you know that there's an entire city that doesn't exist between here and Milwaukee? Carcosa? Don't ever go there.
See, you say don't go there, and that just makes me want to go there more.
Whatever. Just nice to see you still not breathing, I guess.
Loath as I am to admit it to a Tremere, same to you.
Yeah, I'm sure you're less fond of us now than you ever were before.
Oh, believe me, the amount of affection I have for the Tremere could not go any lower. Don't even worry about it.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so what happens now? Do you get to stay in Chicago, or are you just heading off again?
Heading off again for the time. I'm a hound. Hounds are busy. I'm a new hound. New hounds are even busier. It's almost funny, the parallels between this and being an actual detective. Everyone gives you the shit work they don't want to do. So, unfortunately, at the end of the night, indeed, I must return to the prince, but I did want to say hello to everybody. Aside from everything going on, everything that's already happened, just hello.
That's a shame. But if you're taking shit work, the next time the prince gives me something, can I pass it your way? Eh?
You know, I would rather you didn't. But yeah, what the hell? Go ahead.
Nice. Yeah, Theakis. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again as well. You lot have already made me very busy these past few nights, but hey. Here's hoping we can spare some more time now and again, huh?
I mean, it's not like you didn't know that was kind of our whole thing. We, from even when you were hanging out with us, we seemed to cause more problems than solve them. So you knew what was coming.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. Can someone throw Genghis over a balcony again for me? Just for old time's sake? I'd appreciate it.
I can inquire about it, don't worry. I've got a few friends who might be able to help with the particulars. You okay with one story this time around?
I'd rather it be 12, but I guess one will do. So, I'm afraid that I must get back to my work, but I did have one non-friendly little thing to inquire of you lot.
All ears.
Your own investigations. Now, I get that you weren't hounds, you weren't detectives, and you're sure as hell not Banu Hakim. But your own investigations. The missing of the Tremere link? Deliberate? Accidental? What's the deal?
The missing of the Tremere link? What do you mean by that?
The fact that the Tremere were behind, like, this?
Oh, we had so many speculations about that. For a while, people wanted me to talk to Edith because she could use obfuscate, and it made sense that her blood came from her or something like that, but there was really nothing definitive we could go off of.
Well, there were things definitive you could go off of. I found it.
Just raising an eyebrow at Ivy.
My lips are pursed fairly tightly at this moment. How exactly did you find these receipts? How did you find these crumbs to follow?
Well, when you're a hound, you hear talk, you find things, you break into places, you kill the person and eat them who are unhappy about you finding the place. And then you find the letter neatly tucked into his jacket pocket. It's really that easy.
Yeah, but who are you talking to? Who did you hear things from? Because of course we can speculate. Of course it was a thing that we considered. But it sounds a bit like you found your crumbs by sheer dumb luck. How exactly am I supposed to be that lucky, especially when the cookie that you have found is 70 miles from where we were looking?
So, you knew son Newberry was behind the actual act. That's a person you know is behind it. And if this guy had correspondence, you better fucking believe Newberry had correspondence. You didn't think to, do some old B&E? Anything like that? Genuine question. I was out of town. I actually don't know this one.
No, sorry. Once we figured out who was behind everything, we kind of had a few busy days tending to, everything else surrounding it. So no, I definitely did not think to break into our suspect's house, given that we had found one of his locations, rescued 40 some odd humans and the kindred that he was going to diablerize, and also stole one of his ghouls from him. Kind of figured he'd be on high alert there.
Hearing Ivy talk about all this, all I can think of is she really didn't want the Tremere to be brought into it any more than they did, considering how dodgy she was back in Schmendrick's place. But I know better than to spout those kinds of accusations.
I think on Ivy's words a minute. All right. Yeah, you know what? Fair enough. Pretty good exercising of tradecraft there. But hey, next time you want to break into someone's place, give me a ring. I can spare a couple hours.
Oh, but you were in the Goblin Roads. You couldn't call us because you were in the Goblin Roads. So how could I have called you, Josh?
Okay, well, don't call me when I'm on the Goblin Roads, but otherwise, yeah, give me a call, whatever.
Anyway, is that your answer then? Break into his house to find letters that he'd kept? Assuming he kept them.
I mean, he was on high alert, fair enough. But in the future, I mean, consider it. You know, I wasn't fully aware of those little details you mentioned there, but it sounds like you did well enough. For someone who isn't a Benu Hakim anyway.
Look, we knew that the Tremere were involved. It was fairly obvious, but all told, I had no idea who could have been behind it. I know I wasn't. That was enough for me. I didn't want to believe that it was anybody in the city. I didn't think it was Dusable. I was probably the only one in this group who didn't think it was Dusable, but I guess I hadn't considered all of the options.
Honestly, I'm kind of in the same boat as Ivy. People kept throwing out accusations against the Nosferatu, and I didn't want to believe it.
Right. Of course, Rosa didn't have anything to do with it. She's never been the scheming type, but when it comes to your own clan, you have to feel some sense of loyalty, right?
Just remember that they don't feel any sense of loyalty to you. But hey, at the end of the day, you guys figured out part of it, I figured out the other part. In a way, we were working together again. How about we just think of it that way, huh?
Yeah, well, it would have been better if you'd been here the whole time.
Ivy, are you feeling well?
It's the devil you know, because if he had been there, it's likely that we wouldn't have had Maya. I'm not saying it's for sure, but between the two...
Mm-hmm.
After that, I rise to my feet. Now listen, it's been good talking with you a lot again, especially you, Schmendrick. I missed you. But I got people to sniff out, other people to slap around. You know how it is.
I'll miss you, Joshua. When you come back, I'm trying to get invites into a really freaky club. Do you want to come with?
Oh, hell yeah.
Awesome.
I would say call me around for drinks sometime, but, well, you know.
Stay safe out there, Joshua. One other chance to meet up.
With Josh not acknowledging the compliment, I take that as a little bit of a sign, and I just give him a nod and say, until next time.
At this point, I let the facade slip a bit. Until next time. And don't think I did not catch the fact that you complimented me.
I purse my lips again. I don't know what you're talking about.
How he's called attention to it, he's made it awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, luckily, the best solution to an awkward situation is to leave. And with a wave, I step away.
Unfortunately, this reunion will last no longer. The majordomo, the baldest ghoul, comes to collect the prince's guests. With his usual overwhelming politeness, he invites you. The Primogen Council has finished its deliberations. The prince now requests your presence to announce the results.
No time like the present. Let's see what we reap.
The doors to this room are wide open now as you return. It looks significantly less orderly than you left it. Rebecca, the damage that you and your friend inflicted on the door can't hold a candle to the tornado that seems to have swept through this room. There are broken chairs, smashed panels in the wall, It looks for a moment like someone either tried to escape or was thrown through the window. The Primogen in attendance, their clothing is in various degrees of disarray. And Kevin Jackson himself is wearing a wound across the right side of his jaw and down his neck. Jason Newberry is splayed on the center of the table, a stake driven through his back into his heart. And as you turn to face this group, the others, Marcel, etc., entering with you, you can see the sheriff peeling Alexa Santos off the floor. The prince pays this very little mind. The Primogen Council of the city of Chicago saw fit to punish Jason Newberry to 100 years of penance, staked in torpor for the duration. As you can see, Mr. Newberry did not take this well. Once that sentence has elapsed, we will revisit the issue, invite him to show a change in judgment or remorse. Depending on the result of that conversation, he will either be returned to the Primogen Council or returned to Ash whence he came. I have issued this punishment by my authority as Prince. With that, I consider the trial of son Newberry adjourned.
I'm mostly stunned. Perhaps it's because I'm just jaded with society at large, but I didn't expect Newberry to really get the punishment that he deserved, and probably next to no punishment at all. This is a turn of events. Maybe he forced their hand. It was likely his own outburst that drove the stake through his back, but for now, this is acceptable to me. I would prefer that his head be lopped off and he never return. But this is honestly more than I had hoped for.
Sufficient, but not ideal?
You could call it that.
What about you, Rebecca? What would you call it?
I think if I want to continue living within the realm of Chicago, I should hold my tongue. The crimes that this man have committed, to be staked for a century, a blink in the eye of a vampire. It's a mercy he wouldn't have given Zion or any of the humans in his captivity. What he deserved was to be returned to Ash the moment he walked into this room. But no, he's going to get another chance in a century. And I'll be there waiting for him, should he get it.
I suppose a century's worth of torpor does have slightly different meaning for someone who's actually lived to see centuries pass. Ivy, you don't have that breadth of life experience or unlife experience together to fall back on. How are you feeling about this outcome?
Where Schmendrick and Rebecca may feel slighted by this outcome, I think it's actually better than I expected. I understand, surely better than Rebecca and Schmendrick, but better than a good portion of certain clans, how bureaucracy goes. I understand the bureaucratic difficulties that we as Kindred face. The pyramid is ripe with them. So the fact that son Newberry isn't awake right now and won't be our problem for 100 years, well, a lot can happen in 100 years. So we'll burn that bridge when we come to it, but I'm pleasantly surprised that we got as much as we did.
It's slightly more severe than a Tremere equivalent punishment of being dispatched to a chantry in far-flung nowhere. Jason Newberry isn't being assigned under a regent in Nome, Alaska. but I see your point. Sometimes stuffing a problem in a closet is a good enough solution to a problem. Dusable seems to think so.
Excuse you.
His words, not mine. But that's a problem that, now that Newberry is no longer occupying so much of your attention, you will have more resources available to solve, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. The only consolation I think I have in stuffing this problem away into a closet is that you can renovate in 100 years and board up closets as if they never existed. Perhaps that's where we'll find ourselves with this situation.
Indeed. You're right. A lot can happen in 100 years. You might forget where you put that Primogen that you staked. Cities change, after all. But this isn't a story about the passage of centuries. This is a story about individual knights and the struggles of 3 kindred. Moonrise by moonrise, trying to find their place in a city filled with Jason Newberries. You've caught this one, but he was never the reason any of you came to this city in the first place. He was the thing you got caught up in en route to your greater goals. En route to your battle with the werewolves. En route to dealing with Bronwyn. En route to claiming your rightful place in the pyramid. There will be time enough for considering those things in nights to come. For now, the prince seems emphatic that his guests vacate his house. Certain Primogen remain. Jason Newberry's absence on the council will have political consequences well above your station to discuss. I imagine for once you're grateful to not be in the room. Joshua will return to the prince's errands. Schmendrick to Big Bob's big storage. Rebecca to her grain silo. And Ivy to her manor. I expect you'll sleep easier when the sun rises, knowing that this errand is completed, knowing that this chapter has closed. But if recent history is any indication, it will only be a matter of time before the prince brings fresh trouble to your door. But that, as they say, that's a story for another night. You've been listening to The All Night Society, an actual play podcast brought to you by Queen's Court Games. If you enjoyed your stay, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For more content, including exclusive art and audio, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Queen's Court Games, or on Twitter at Queen's Court RPG.